My name is Claire Hensley. I'm 34 years old. And last March, at my father-in-law's 70th birthday dinner, my mother-in-law stood up from the table, smoothed her blazer, and slid a manila folder across the white linen toward my husband. She said, "Before we cut the cake, there's something the family needs to know." She was smiling when she said it. She was not smiling by the time the night was over. But here's the part she never counted on. I had known what was in that folder for 11 days. And I had spent every single one of those 11 days making sure that when she opened that door, it swung back and hit her. Let me take you back to the beginning. I met Nathan Hensley at a graduate architecture conference in Chicago. He was presenting a paper on adaptive reuse, converting old industrial buildings into housing. I was there covering it for a design journal I was writing for at the time. He was tall, a little awkward at the podium, and he used the phrase emotional load-bearing to describe the way a building carries the memory of its former life. I thought, I want to talk to this person for the rest of mine. We dated for 8 months before he brought me home to meet his parents. His mother, Diane Hensley, opened the door in a cream blouse, pearl buttons, and an expression that I can only describe as a smile with an asterisk. "So you're the writer," she said. Not warmly. Factually. The way someone reads a label before deciding whether to keep something. His father, Robert, was different. Loud, generous, already pulling me into the kitchen to taste the sauce he'd been simmering since morning. He was the kind of man who cooked like it was an act of love, which it was. Diane stood in the doorway watching us. I noticed it then, the way she watched everything. Not with curiosity. With inventory. Nathan had a younger brother, Elliot, who was 26 at the time. Still living at home, working in their family's small commercial real estate business. Elliot was charming in that unfinished way that some youngest children are still learning the shape of himself. He adored Diane. He called her twice a day. If Nathan was a house Diane had already finished decorating, Elliot was the project she was still actively working on. Nathan and I got engaged the following spring. Small ceremony, 60 people, venue in the Connecticut hills. Diane wore ivory. My maid of honor said it was calculated. I said let it go. The first 2 years were fine. Nathan and I lived 40 minutes from his parents. Close enough for Sunday dinners. Far enough for breathing room, in theory. Diane did not believe in breathing room. She called Nathan every morning. Not texts. Calls. She gave opinions on our apartment furniture. She forwarded real estate listings for houses she liked. Once, she rescheduled our dinner reservation at a restaurant she didn't approve of by calling ahead and canceling the booking herself. When I found out, Nathan said, "She just worries about us having a good experience." I said, "She canceled a reservation we made." He said, "She meant well." I wrote it down in the back of my planner. Not because I'm dramatic. Because I was a journalist by training. You write things down. Our son, Owen, was born 22 months into our marriage. 7 pounds, 10 ounces. He had Nathan's nose and my dark eyes. The nurses said he looked like a tiny, furious philosopher, which felt accurate. Diane held him in the hospital room and cried. Real tears, warm ones. For about 15 minutes, I thought, maybe this is the thing that softens her. Then Owen's hair started coming in. He was 3 months old when it became obvious, copper blonde. Almost golden in certain light. A color no one on Nathan's side had seen before. Diane had brown hair. Robert had brown hair. Elliot had brown hair. Nathan had brown hair. And Owen was arriving at every family gathering looking like a small, cheerful sunrise. Interesting, Diane said at Owen's first birthday. She was holding him against her hip. Where does this come from? I explained. My grandfather on my mother's side had the same coloring. Classic recessive genetics. Not unusual. Diane smiled the way someone smiles when they've already formed their conclusion. I'm just not sure I've seen that in our family. She said our family like I was a guest. I smiled back. I noted the date in my planner. That was the beginning of the campaign. Diane was not a dramatic woman. She was methodical. She planted seeds the way careful gardeners do, one at a time, spaced far enough apart that no single one seemed like an intentional act. Comments about Owen's hair became routine. Asterisk, he's so uniquely colored. No one on our side looks like that. Are there any Scandinavians in your family, Claire? Maybe that's it. Asterisk. Elliot began echoing her. He posted a photo of Owen at Christmas with the caption, "Little mystery boy, where did you come from? 30 hearts." 3 crying laugh emojis. A cousin commented, "He doesn't look like a Hensley." I showed Nathan. He said, "Elliot doesn't mean anything by it." I said, "I know what he means by it." He didn't respond. The extended family shifted. Nathan's uncle Carl stopped making eye contact with me at cookouts. His cousin Tamara, who had always texted me links to design articles she thought I'd like, went quiet. Diane's oldest friend, Beverly, who had been at our wedding, started watching me with that particular expression, patient, waiting. None of it was said directly. That was the architecture of it. Diane was building a structure out of implication. By the time anyone could name what was happening, the foundation was already in place. I kept writing things down. I was doing freelance editorial consulting by then, mostly for architecture and design publications. I worked from home 3 days a week. On the days Owen was at daycare, I sat at my desk with my coffee and my notebooks, and I thought clearly. Nathan was good at building things with his hands. I was good at building things with information. I want to tell you about Nathan, because this story is also his. He is not a bad man. He is a man who grew up inside a house his mother designed, and like anyone raised in a particular structure, he had learned to move through it without questioning the load-bearing walls. He loved me. He was a good father. He also, for the first 4 years of our marriage, could not see what I saw. When I mentioned Diane's comments, he'd nod in that careful way, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, just absorbing. When I said they were escalating, he'd say he'd talk to her. He never did. Not because he was weak. Because he had learned very early that the path of least resistance with Diane was also the only path she allowed. The folder incident started 11 days before Robert's birthday dinner. I was picking Owen up from daycare when I got a call from our pediatrician's billing office. There had been a records request, they said. Someone had submitted a formal request for Owen's medical history, including birth records and blood type documentation. The request was made by a Diane Hensley, who had listed herself as a legal guardian. I sat in the parking lot of the daycare for 4 minutes. Owen was inside making a macaroni picture frame. I could see him through the window, concentrating. I called the billing office back. I told them I had not authorized this request. The office confirmed they had flagged it as unusual. Standard procedure was to verify with the primary parent and had not yet released anything. I asked them to deny it and document the attempt. Then I called my friend Priya, who is a family attorney in Hartford. Priya listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she said 2 things. First, Diane just violated the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Second, do not say a word to Nathan yet. I started to protest. Priya cut me off gently but firmly. If you tell Nathan today, he calls his mother. She cries. She apologizes. He forgives her. And she tries again in a different way. If you want this to actually stop, you let her finish what she started. Priya was right. I had seen this pattern for 4 years. I knew the script by heart. I paid Priya's consultation fee. I picked up Owen. I drove home. That night, after Nathan fell asleep, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I went back through everything. For years of planner entries. The comments, the canceled reservation, the Instagram post, the shifting extended family. 31 documented incidents. Then I sent Priya a full summary. On day 5, I found something I hadn't expected. I was looking into what Diane could have been hoping to find in Owen's medical records, trying to understand the angle. Blood type documentation is sometimes used to imply paternity questions. If a child's blood type doesn't match a certain parent, it can raise flags, even if it doesn't prove anything definitively. Owen is B positive. Nathan is O positive. I am A positive. Here's what I knew that Diane didn't. 2 O positive parents cannot have a B positive child. Which, if Diane was planning to use Owen's blood type to imply Nathan wasn't his father, she had just handed herself a problem. Because Nathan's listed blood type was O positive. But if 2 O positive parents produced a B positive child, that would mean one of the parents wasn't actually O positive. Or that Nathan wasn't really O positive. I stared at the screen. I pulled Nathan's medical record from a file we kept at home, the summary our GP had given us when we switched practices 2 years ago. Nathan's blood type, O positive. Listed since birth. B positive children can be born to an A positive mother and a B positive father. If Nathan's actual type wasn't O, if the birth record had been miscategorized or never updated, Owen's type made complete sense. But there was another possibility. If Robert Hensley's blood type was not O, then the O listed for Nathan might simply be an error. Or, I'm a journalist. I follow threads. I started looking for Robert's medical information, not intrusively. I had legitimate access to some of it through the insurance coordination we'd helped set up for his 70th birthday health screening package. The one Diane had asked me to manage because she found the online portal confusing. Robert's blood type, B positive. I sat very still. If Robert Hensley is B positive, and I am A positive, and Owen is B positive, the genetics are completely consistent. Owen's blood type made perfect sense if Nathan's O positive birth record was simply a transcription error and his actual type was B, which would be completely consistent with a B positive father. Diane had built a case around Owen's blood type and coloring to imply I had been unfaithful. What she didn't realize was that the very documentation she was trying to weaponize would reveal that either Nathan's records contained a clerical error from birth, or raise a different and much more complicated question about Robert Hensley's family history. I called Priya. She said, "How sure are you?" I said, "Sure enough to let Sunday happen." On day 8, Elliot called Nathan. I heard half the conversation from the kitchen. Mom wants everyone at Dad's birthday. She says it's important. She wants the whole family there. A pause. Yeah, she said she has something to share. I set my coffee down. I knew exactly what the folder contained. Diane had finally gotten what she was looking for from somewhere, possibly a direct-to-consumer DNA kit or a private lab. I wasn't sure which, and she was going to present it at Robert's birthday dinner in front of everyone who mattered. She had built a stage. She had invited an audience. She had rehearsed. I spent the next 3 days doing 2 things. I worked with Priya to document the medical records request formally. And I requested a proper blood type confirmation for Nathan through our GP, just a standard update to his records, the kind you do when files transfer between practices. Nathan didn't think anything of it. He rolled up his sleeve and they took a small sample, and 3 days later, the confirmed result came back. Nathan Hensley, B positive. The O on his birth record was a clerical error. It had followed him for 34 years without anyone catching it. It was not sinister. It was a box checked wrong by an overworked intake nurse in 1989. But Diane didn't know that. She had obtained what she believed was proof Owen's blood type didn't match a child of two O-positive parents, and she was walking into Sunday dinner believing she held a grenade. She did. She just didn't know it was pointed at herself. Friday night, I told Nathan everything. Not as a strategy. Not because the timing was right. Because he was my partner and I was done carrying this alone. I sat him down at the kitchen table. I opened my planner to the first entry for years ago. I laid it all out. The incidents. Priya's involvement. The medical records request. The blood type research. The corrected test result. What I believed was going to happen at Sunday dinner. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "She thinks Owen isn't mine." I said yes. He looked at the table. "She told Elliot to make sure everyone was there." Yes. He stood up, walked to the window, stood there for a while. When he turned around, his face had changed. Not angry exactly. Something more like a man who had just understood the shape of a room he'd been standing in for years. "What do you want to do?" he said. "I want to let her open the folder," I said. "And then I want to answer every question she thinks she's raising." He was quiet again. Then, "Okay." One word. But it held everything. We drove to Robert's birthday dinner on a Sunday afternoon. Owen wore a yellow sweater. He fell asleep in his car seat holding a small stuffed elephant Nathan had given him. The radio played something slow and old. Nathan reached across and held my hand on the console. Robert's house was full when we arrived. Elliot's car in the driveway. Nathan's aunt and uncle, Sandra and Paul. A cousin I barely knew, Marcus. Beverly, Diane's oldest friend. The house smelled like roast chicken and gardenias. Robert met us at the door. 70 years old and still the kind of man who grips your shoulder when he hugs you, like he means it. He held Owen up and said, "There's my sunshine boy," and Owen giggled and grabbed his nose. Diane was in the kitchen. She greeted Nathan with a long hug and me with a brief one. She looked like she'd slept well. Confident. The way someone looks when they believe they already know how the evening ends. On the sideboard in the dining room, I saw the folder. Cream cardstock, neatly labeled. She had placed it there intentionally, where anyone walking past could see it. Dinner was lovely, genuinely. Robert made his stories last twice as long as they needed to, and everyone laughed anyway. Elliot kept glancing at the sideboard. Sandra and Paul talked about a cruise they were planning. Owen ate 3 dinner rolls and fell asleep on a cushion in the corner before dessert. I watched Diane. She was performing ease. And she was doing it beautifully, but I had 4 years of practice reading her, and I could see the performance for what it was. When the plates were cleared, she stood up. She smoothed her blazer. She touched her pearl earring. And she said, "Before we cut the cake, there's something the family needs to know." The table went quiet the way tables do in the air shifts. She walked to the sideboard. She picked up the folder. She returned to her seat and placed it in front of Nathan. "Open it," she said. Nathan looked at her. "Mom, what is this?" "It's documentation," she said. Her voice was measured, practiced. "I've been concerned. About Owen. About some inconsistencies. His blood type doesn't match what it should have." "If what?" Nathan said. She looked at me. Just briefly, but long enough. "If everything is as it should be." Sandra's fork clinked against her plate. Paul looked at the table. Beverly stared at Diane. "I love this family," Diane continued. "I love my son. And I believe he has a right to know the truth." Nathan opened the folder. I watched his face as he read. He had known what was in it. We had gone through every possible version of this conversation. But still, seeing it laid out, printed, presented at his father's birthday dinner in front of the people who loved him, I could see what it cost him. He read the first page. Then he looked up. "Mom," he said. "Owen's blood type is B positive." "Yes," she said. "And you're O positive." "Which means?" "I'm not O positive," Nathan said. Diane blinked. "My blood type has been listed incorrectly since birth. I had it corrected this week." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced the result. Folded neatly. He set it on the table. "B positive. Same as Owen. Same as Dad." Diane's expression didn't fall. It cracked. Like a plate that's been struck precisely, still in place, but fractured along a fault line you didn't know was there. "That can't," she started. "It can," I said. My voice was quiet. Not cold. Steady. The same voice I use when I'm correcting a source in a story. Nathan's records contained an error from 1989. The genetics are completely consistent. Owen is Nathan's son. Robert set his glass down. "Diane, what did you do?" "I was trying to," she began. "What did you do?" His voice was low and even. The voice of a man who built things carefully and did not like to see them torn apart carelessly. "I requested Owen's medical records," I said. "Without my authorization, which is a HIPAA violation. My attorney has documented it." I let that land for a moment. "I'm telling you that now, here, because I want everyone at this table to understand what was done, and why it didn't work, and what happens next." The table was completely still. Elliot was looking at his hands. "Beverly," Robert said, without looking away from Diane. "Would you mind taking Owen to the guest room?" Beverly nodded quickly, lifted the sleeping Owen from his cushion, and disappeared down the hallway. Nathan stood up. He was not raising his voice. He was something harder to manage than loud. He was calm. "Mom, you planned this for my father's birthday. I planned it because I love you. You planned it because you do not trust me to run my own life." He touched the folder. This was meant to humiliate Claire. In front of everyone. Diane looked at me. And for a moment, one small, strange moment, I saw something real in her face. Not malice. Fear. The particular terror of a woman who has spent 30 years controlling what people think of her, feeling that grip slip. "I never trusted her," Diane said quietly. "I want you to understand that." "I know," Nathan said. "That's the problem." He looked around the table, at Elliot, at Sandra, at Paul, at Marcus, and then he looked at his father. "Dad, happy birthday." He picked up the folder. "I'm sorry your night ended like this." Robert nodded slowly. His eyes were on Diane, and they held something I had never seen in him before. Not anger. Something sadder than anger. The expression of someone recalculating a long-held certainty. We left before the cake was cut. In the car, Owen slept in the back. Nathan drove without music. The highway was dark and almost empty. I watched his hands on the wheel, the same hands that drafted blueprints, that lifted Owen above his head to make him shriek with laughter, that had found mine in the dark on nights when I was too tired to ask for comfort. "How long did you know?" he said finally. 11 days. "Why didn't you tell me at the beginning?" "Because you would have called her," I said. "And she would have cried. And you would have forgiven her. And she would have tried again." He was quiet for a while. "You're probably right," he said. "I know I'm right," I said. Not unkindly. "I've watched the pattern for 4 years." He exhaled. Long and slow. "She really thought Owen wasn't mine." "She needed to believe it," I said. "Because the alternative was accepting that I was always exactly who I said I was." He reached across and found my hand. He held it until we pulled into our driveway. He turned off the engine and sat for a moment in the dark. "Thank you," he said, "for not protecting me from it." "That's not what partners do," I said. The following week moved the way weeks do after the ground shifts slowly and with a different texture underfoot. Nathan called Diane on Monday. The conversation was brief. Asterisk, I need time. Do not contact Claire or come to the house. Asterisk. Diane said, for how long? Nathan said, until I decide. He hung up, poured coffee, and went to his drafting table. That was Nathan. He processed by working. Robert called Wednesday. He was staying at his brother Paul's house. He said, "She told me about the records request, Nathan. I'm very sorry that was done to your family." His voice was even. The voice of a man working through something very carefully. "We're going to get some counseling. And there are going to be some changes." Elliot texted me on Thursday. 3 words, "I'm sorry, Claire." Then a longer message on Friday. He said he had spent 3 days asking himself why he never questioned what his mother told him. He said he didn't have a good answer. He said he understood if I wasn't ready to respond. I wrote back, asterisk, "Thank you for saying that. I'll be in touch, asterisk." Priya sent Diane a formal letter. HIPAA violation documentation, notice of potential civil liability, cease and desist regarding any further attempts to access Owen's records without authorization. Diane called Nathan in a panic. Nathan told her to retain a lawyer. 3 weeks after the dinner, Diane came to our house. She knocked at the front door, not the side entrance she'd always used before. I noticed that. She was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe the dinner had just taken something from her that she hadn't yet gotten back. Her blazer was a soft gray. Her pearl earring was missing from her left ear. "I need you to understand," she said. I was afraid. I looked at her. A woman who had spent 4 years measuring everything about me, cataloging my flaws, quietly building a case, afraid. "I know," I said. "I never felt like you fit," she said. "And I know that's not your fault." I couldn't stop looking for a reason. Nathan stepped forward. "Mom, Claire didn't have to let Sunday happen the way it did. She had options. She chose to let you say what you believed, in front of people who love us, so that everyone could see it clearly." He paused. "That took more generosity than you deserved." Diane looked at me. And for the first time in 5 years, she looked at me without inventory, without assessment. "Can we?" she started. "You're welcome to be Owen's grandmother," I said. "He loves you. We won't take that from him." She exhaled. "But it will be on our schedule, with our boundaries. And you will never, under any circumstances, access his records or take any action involving his health or well-being without coming to us first." She nodded. Slowly, but without argument. "Those are the terms," I said. She stepped off the porch. She walked to her car. She didn't look back. Robert came back home 6 weeks later. He had conditions. Honest conversation. No more unilateral decisions. No more performing certainty when she was actually afraid. They began therapy together, something Diane had resisted for 20 years. She stopped wearing the pearl earrings. I noticed, but didn't say anything. Elliot moved out of his parents' house in May. He got an apartment in New Haven. He started seeing a therapist of his own. He and Nathan had lunch once a month, carefully, quietly rebuilding something that had been built slightly crooked the first time. At Owen's 4th birthday party, Diane arrived on time, with a wrapped gift, and she did not touch anyone's hair or make any comments about coloring or genetics. She sat next to Beverly and ate cake and watched Owen tear open his presents with the ferocity only 4-year-olds can sustain. When Owen ran to her with a piece of cake on a paper plate, "Grandma D, you need cake." She took it and she laughed. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't need an audience. I watched from across the yard. Nathan appeared beside me with 2 glasses of lemonade. "She's trying," he said. "I know," I said. "That's enough. For now." He handed me the lemonade. We watched our son run circles around the picnic table, copper blonde hair catching the afternoon light like something lit from inside. The cream folder still sits in my filing cabinet. I keep it behind the completed projects tab. Not because I need it as a weapon. Because it reminds me that sometimes the trap someone sets for you becomes the clearest possible record of who they actually are. Here's what I know now. The people who work hardest to find fault in you are usually running from something they can't name in themselves. Fear is not an excuse, but understanding it is what keeps you from becoming the version of them you were fighting against. And the truth doesn't need a birthday dinner or a cream folder or an audience of extended family members to survive. It just needs someone willing to document it carefully and wait. That's my story. A folder, a birthday dinner, and a blood type error that had been sitting uncorrected since 1989. And now I want to ask you something. If you were in my place, would you have exposed Diane in front of the whole family that night or handled it privately? And do you think she deserved a second chance after everything she did? Tell me honestly in the comments. I read every one. If this reminded you to hold your ground when someone tries to make you doubt yourself, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.